science degree in nursing from East Carolina University. She also holds a certification in the care of adult medical and surgical patients. She is a wife, mother, and born again child of the Most High King.
Are live in the studio today on Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. And we're on Awesome Radio Facebook page. We're on Awesome Radio GPAT Facebook page and Awesome Radio YouTube. Look at God. He is just so incredible. He is so amazing. And I am just so excited about the things that he's doing. And I'm so glad that he has included me in all his wonderful work. So just wanted to let you know that we are here on Family Health Matters every Thursday from 3 to 3:30. And we invite you to join us each Thursday. We have so wonderful presenters and discussions about family health, things that really do matter. And so we got a lot to talk about today. And I promised myself that I was not going to talk a lot because we have just, well, I'm just partial. Every Thursday is just wonderful. But we have some more information that we wanted to share. I have Maya Pittman with me. You guys have seen her face on the program before. She has just been such a blessing to the ministry and a blessing to Family Health Matters until we have brought her back. And she's going to be a familiar face that you'll see quite a bit with me on this journey. And just with everything that's going on with COVID still here, Omicron is still here, and people are just thinking physically a lot about how their physical health is, but we wanted to focus today on our mental health, our mental well-being. So our topic today is COVID's impact on our mental health. And Maya is going to talk to us, and I'm going to sit attentively and try not to jump in there because I want her to be able to cover all this wonderful information because she wants to talk to us about our mind and our body, stress management, what's going on with the chaos in our lives. How do we handle these things? How do we handle our children, school, all of these things? So we're going to just jump right in. And Maya, if you want to have anything you say before you get started, but our topic today is again, COVID impact on our mental health. So welcome, Maya. Thank you again for being here with us on Family Health Matters.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to get the information out because that is how we can help ourselves and help each other.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, how we can help each other. Because if I help you, you can help me, and then we can help our community, and we can just expand broader and broader. So more information we have that we can share, the more educated we are, and the more we can impact each other. So
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and get started talking about a little bit about the mind and the body. What does that look like?
Absolutely. So I think it's so important right now to talk about something that I don't think comes up often enough when we consider mental health, which is something called the mind-body connection. And this is so important today because we're so consumed with everything going on physically, right? We've got COVID-19, we're in a pandemic, and we have all these physical and doctor and CDC reports. But there's something called the mind-body connection, which displays that there's an invisible communication that's constantly happening between our physical selves or our body and our minds. And it's really important that if we're going to talk about mental health, we also have to be responsible for recognizing how what is going on physically or medically with us is going to overall impact how we think, how we feel, and what we're experiencing on a mental health level. So one of the things that I'll say as an example is, as a private practice therapist, I get many referrals from primary care doctors in which someone goes into the doctor's office for perhaps a chronic headache or stomach pains, and their doctor sees that there's nothing medically going on, but then refers them to speak with someone, a clinician or a counselor, and there they recognize, oh, I've been stressed for this long, right? Or I've been experiencing depression, and that's why my body is responding in this way. So I think it's important for us to point out that connection, especially in this time period that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because I've had a couple of friends who have come to me and just in conversation, and they're talking about physically symptoms that they have. Then, like you said, stomach aches, headaches, just feeling really bad, feeling depressed, just feeling just not being able to pinpoint it, and even so with hypertension as well, the elevated blood pressure. And they say they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Well, lab work looks good, all your numbers look good, but." What about your mental health? What's
Yeah.
going on? And people feel like, I can't even address that because I'm trying to make sure my body is well. But as you just stated, that in order for your body to be well, your mind has to be well as also. So tell us a little bit more about the symptoms that will portray or we will see if we're having a mental, I don't want to say a mental condition or but a impact
Yeah.
mentally.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that can depend on what is going on mentally, but one of the baseline ways we can consider is the brain is constantly translating our thoughts and our feelings, and it's
Mhm.
translating them into literal chemical impulses. And that is what gets sent through the body, and it causes this chemical reaction. So, a great example of that is in anxiety. And we use this term called panic attacks or anxiety attacks. Some people may be familiar with it, but the way we really diagnose that primarily is through the physical experience. So this would entail a racing heartbeat, for example. Your skin may get really hot, you may get overheated. It even goes so far as to some people feeling like they're about to have a heart attack, where tension really builds up into the body. But that is actually a sign of anxiety and a potential anxiety attack. And so, right now, for example, with COVID-19, we are really hyper vigilant about who we're around, who we've come in contact with. And this can create this nervousness that causes us to become jittery. It may cause our breathing to speed up and our heartbeat to begin racing just from the idea of potentially receiving a positive diagnosis of COVID. And so that's a small example. Another one I would say is depression. Again, while we're in the pandemic, many of us and our families, we've been isolated for very long periods of time. I've even run into some clients and people that I've worked with who have to isolate from their family members within their own home.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that we use again to diagnose depression, for example, is have you been crying more often than not? Right. And assessing energy levels. Does it feel like you're overly tired or overly fatigued? And again, that is an example of how our physical experience can translate to a mental health concern. That sadness can take a lot of energy from our bodies. That inability to physically connect with other people can really weigh down on someone and impact how we're sleeping, how our energy levels are feeling, and just our overall physical health.
That is a really good example, and I just want to just ask you about this, about the mental health part. Now, you mentioned about the positive COVID test and being your example that you gave about your patients or your clients, excuse me, that has experience of being quarantined in the house with another family, and I've heard that in as very frequent now is that children are coming back positive, testing positive, or dad may be positive and the children are not, or mom may, and trying to figure out, we know, or we can talk about the physical part of how to isolate yourself. You quarantine, put somebody in one room, have all those things. But tell us a little bit more about the mental health piece. How do we help families manage that? Because we know, the doctor has told, quarantine yourself from the other family members. So we know physically what we need to do, and we know we need to wear the mask and all that. But how do we handle that mentally? Can you?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. So one of the ways we want to think about managing or balancing our mental health in the midst of some of these physical changes and adjustments is reducing stress. So when we think about stress, we're talking about a reaction that disturbs our mental balance. And so we want to think about very creative ways, especially to reduce stress. And some of the examples of that are, especially in the home, talk to others and make connections. So whereas we kind of look at being connected in the physical sense, this is a prime time to create some sort of system where you're able to have open dialogue about how you're feeling, about what you're thinking. And that in itself creates a connection that can really nourish our mental health and create a balance. Another thing is to think about staying organized. So when you think about our mental health, we thrive off of mental organization. So just because we're isolated and we're in the house and nobody's coming over doesn't mean that because maybe our rooms stay a little bit out of order for longer than not, or we keep the pillows and things in the living room strewn about, that actually has a major impact on our mental health. And so this may be an opportunity for everyone in the home to assume different responsibilities to keep everyone organized, which will overall impact how we're thinking and how we feel balanced on a mental level. The other thing that I would say, which is a major one and maybe a little bit difficult, especially now as we're approaching a pending winter storm, is getting outside. I think one of the positive things in terms of how we can connect is we know that we reduce the transmission of COVID-19 by being outdoors and being in the open air. So this may be an opportunity where you can take a walk with family members. If you could go out somewhere, maybe to an open place where you can have that 6 feet of distance, that open air actually provides our mental selves with a sense of peace, a sense of calm. You think about getting sunlight. Vitamin D is really important when it comes to experiences such as depression, feelings of sadness, reduced energy, just to give us some of that jolt that we need on a mental health level. So these are just a few examples of what we can do in terms of thinking about how can I reduce stress, because that's where we're going to see the overall mental impact as well.
That's good. That's good because of that stress. And I was thinking too while you were talking, when you gave the example about walking outside and going back to being quarantined in the house with your family members in one separate place. But that is a good example. And I don't think we think about it when we think about being quarantined. You think somebody has to be in a room by themselves, or they can't come in the family room where everybody else. So that is a perfect example of doing mental health and physical well-being is when you move all the family outside. And even though one person may have COVID, but everybody else, but at least you can see and you can, visualize them, and you're getting that vitamin D that you talked about, and being able to move around because you've got the air, so you're less likely to be cross-contaminating each other. So
Right.
that is a really good idea. So because I was thinking about, so many people have been trying to figure out, how do I keep my life together when we've got people that's quarantined at different times? And
Mhm.
again, I like too about what you said about the organization. And, even still being quarantined, you're exactly right. You can't let it go. You can't let it go, because if you have chaos around you, then you feel chaotic. And
Absolutely. And I think a big question when we talk about our mental health and that stress is finding time to reduce stress. And
mhm.
although we have many people who may be working remote, some people may still have to go out and commute, it can still feel difficult despite the changes to find time to engage in some of these things. And so a really good piece that we may need to think about is, how can I prioritize? What are the things that really need to happen for me to feel like I have a sense of balance, for me to feel like I can re-energize, talk with my family and take care of ourselves? Because although I'm saying a lot of different pieces that we can consider, that in itself can feel overwhelming. So if you have each family member just consider one thing that they could do that they think would feel good to them or provide some sense of joy or peace, that's a way that you can prioritize what needs to happen for the whole family.
But prioritize in communicating and making sure that you're seeing and hearing everybody. And that goes
Absolutely.
back to being quarantined again. I'm just on this quarantine thing because I've just heard it so much, not just only, today, but in my family life, and also at work, about different situations with quarantine. And it's important, I think, that you said that people recognize that it's not all about you. Just because you're quarantined, you still need to look at how everybody else is being affected. And
Mhm.
I like the idea of what you said is doing that piece of identifying what's important to that other family member. And
Absolutely.
tell us some ways that you can sort of put your hands on how you can help, even with the children. How can you help them sort of verbalize what's important to them and what they're feeling?
Definitely. And that's exactly what I was thinking about. The children, especially when we think from a developmental standpoint, children, even as young as babies, thrive on routine. And
Mm,
so if we can empathize for a moment, put ourselves in our little one's shoes, or even up through teenagers, what would they be doing on a regular basis that they now are no longer able to do? And so, whereas you may not have access to some of those activities that they're engaged with, one of the things we know is that if they are able to do something or talk about something or have an experience at a very consistent level at the same time every day, that's going to be very, very helpful. So, for example, you may start the morning as a family with prayer. You may, before dinner time, everyone goes around and say one thing that was challenging today and one thing that they're looking forward to. And whereas those seem like very small things, a child will be able to look forward to that. Right.
mhm.
And it will provide them with a lot of relief just knowing, hey, I know we're going to do this thing today before we start or before we go to bed. And so, as a family, I think coming together and being creative about, hey, we're in quarantine. What's our quarantine routine? And what can we do and know is coming every day as a family? That goes a very long way with children. One last thing that I would add with children, since we're talking about the mind body connection, is we have to understand that many people are not in a place of privilege to access some of the things that they would outside of the home that they do inside of the home. And so this would be a good opportunity to think about things such as healthy eating, which has a major impact on our mental health. It's very easy right now to order takeout, to quickly, throw things into the microwave. And that may be what some of our families, the only thing that we have. But there are a lot of resources such as the food bank. I know at ECU, they have what's called a purple pantry where they're able to give away free food as well, just to think about incorporating healthy options at home, whereas maybe you all otherwise would not have that or only access it outside of the home.
Oh wow, that's very good. Because you don't think about those little things, and I love the way when you were talking about the routine for the morning and the night. I remember when our children were growing up. One of the things that my husband always did was, as they got ready to go out of the door, he would pray for them, and they got so that they look for that, and they were going, if he doesn't come to the door or something, he's like, well, you ain't gonna pray for us today. You're not gonna pray for us today. And we can so easily, with the chaos and with COVID and everything else in our lives being so busy, could forget those things that are very significant, not only to the children but to us as well. So
Very true.
that's a very, very good point. So now you mentioned a little bit about, we talked a little bit about anxiety, and a little bit about depression. We touched on a little about the depression. What else can we talk about as far as depression is concerned? Because we want to make sure we don't miss that piece, because um, not everybody handles depression the same.
Absolutely.
So, what are some signs, or some, I don't want to say symptoms, but what are some things that we as family members should start looking for, we should watch for?
Definitely. So, although depression is very common, it's a very serious, and we consider it a mood disorder that causes persistent feelings of sadness or loss of interest. And so, this is where, especially in the home, and when you think about children seeking mental health concerns, we assess the parents because they're in the home with the child and they're able to observe. So, we want to look for any changes of behavior where maybe our children or other family members, adults as well, have trouble doing normal day-to-day activities. Maybe whereas they were able to, or we observe them waking up at the same time every day, they sleep in a little bit longer. Maybe they eat a little bit more or eat a little bit less. These are some of the things that we want to look out for. And when we think about signs and symptoms, we, as mental health professionals, we categorize them. So
Hmm.
some more of those behavioral symptoms that I mentioned, sleeping too much or too little, eating more or less, nervous habits, you may see an increase in nail biting, for example, or pulling hair. But on the physical end, You'll also see things such as nausea, right? You'll see things such as having aches and pains is a really big one for depression. So sometimes if you notice a family member is stretching or complains about maybe an ache in their leg or in their arm a little bit more often than not, that, believe it or not, is something you may want to look more into as a sign of depression. And I think a really big one that shows up in families right now during the pandemic is irritability. If you notice an increased moodiness or an irritability in someone who otherwise doesn't display that more often than not, that is absolutely a potential sign that there's a bigger issue going on, and it very well could be a sadness or a major depressive experience.
Now, since you brought up irritability, now you brought it up. So now how are you gonna when we recognize it? I've recognized it, it's going on. Um, my husband or child or somebody. So now how do I help them? Or
Yeah.
what do I do? What's my next step?
I think the thing about irritability and just any type of emotional or behavioral shift is we have a tendency as human beings, understandably and appropriately so, to take that personally. Hey, what did I do? Right? Is it something that I said? And so if we can think to understand and then be understood, hey, let's allow ourselves to get out of the habit of always thinking us first and think about those around us first. So that may be a very great opportunity, instead of saying, what did I do, to say, hey, what are you experiencing? Are you okay? This doesn't quite seem like you. Is something going on? So one of the ways that families can be keen on responding to these sorts of changes are turn into more of an investigator. Let me be aware and let me be more curious about what those around me and in my home are experiencing, instead of defensive.
Oh, that is great. That is great. So what will be some questions that, if we're going to be an investigator now I'm going to seek out trying to find a way I can help my family. So what are some questions or what does that investigation look like?
Absolutely. So I think a really good thing to think about is timing. Again, we're human beings. We may know that we'll have a snap reaction, and that may be emotional. So you may just want to be an observer, and then at a later time approach a family member and say, hey, earlier I noticed this happened.
Mm.
Are you okay? And so one of the things you want to think about is timing. I think the other T you want to consider is tone. So even if you're feeling like you're taking something personal or you feel offended by something, your tone and how we express that frustration makes a major difference into the impact and someone's willingness to share that they're going through something. So this may mean saying something you otherwise would maybe scream or yell in a very calm, quiet tone. And that will more than likely allow someone to feel more comfortable expressing themselves. And again, I think if we loop back around to the routine of check-ins, that's why it's so important, because it gives someone an opportunity to more consistently express what they're feeling and going through, instead of allowing things to kind of build up. And we all know when we allow things to build up, they eventually explode. And now we have an interruption of communication. And so to be proactive about it, we want to create spaces where we're able to openly talk, ask, and answer questions for one another.
That is awesome. That is good because you sometimes you really don't realize how you may be talking or speaking.
Mhm.
And I think we have to turn, as you said, the burden back on yourself sometimes and say, I really didn't mean to say it like that. It just came out. And the building up, because I think sometimes we say, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So I don't say anything. But then after a while and after a while and after a while, then you explode and then it's too late. So
Absolutely.
that's really good. That's
And if
really
I could, one more consideration for that is sometimes we're always in this mode of asking questions to get answers, but sometimes it's important to remind our family members of our role in their lives. So an example of that can, let's say you're just walking past the kitchen and you let someone know, hey, I love you, here if you need to talk. So there's no question involved. There's maybe not even a dialogue involved, but what it does is it creates a mental imprint that to this other person or family member, hey, there's a resource in this person. I don't have to attack them. And if I need to talk or I need to utilize them, I can.
Oh wow. That is really that's major because you don't ask for that. If you walk in by the door, you didn't ask for you to tell me that. And that's
Right.
going to make me sit back and think, "Oh my gosh. why did she say that? Or why did he say that? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And it makes you feel important. It makes you feel significant.
Absolutely.
And because you can be in a society and people around you and you can still not feel a part of what's going on.
Yes.
And I think going back to being quarantined again, you can feel that way. Especially if you're behind a door and you hear the family members and everybody out in the other room, and how wonderful it would be for somebody to yell out, "Hey, Jane, I love you. You back there, but I still love you. What you need? What you need?" So that's major. That is really good. Tell us really quickly, and we're down to right at 3 minutes.
Okay.
But tell us just 1 or 2 points that we could just share about. I know college life is just like, do I go to school? Am I going to school? Are they going to close the school down? Just really briefly, just touch on that.
In
I know
terms
that's a
of
whole lot, but
yeah, well, I think one of a big thing to consider for college students is creating a community and getting in contact with that community. So connect with your university. The university has endless amounts of support to provide students that may feel isolated, that maybe they just transferred and they don't have a community. But there are programs and there are events that are available to college students. So if you as a college student reach out to your student affairs offices, they should be able to provide you with a list of resources, not even just things that you can do to get involved, but mental health resources as well. The other thing is, even with college students, check in with each other. So whether it be your roommate, whether it be across the hall, whether it be a cousin who goes to another university and they're going through the same thing, being able to check in and then be honest about where you are and how you're doing to model that mode of communication with college students as well. The last thing I will say briefly about college students is really important to identify what's within your control and what's not in your control. Especially with college students, that's a skill and a life skill that's being learned. And if you're able to really acknowledge, there's nothing I can do about this, but there's something I can do about this, that's going to go a long way with reducing stress and being able to identify the proper resources.
That's true. That's true, because I think sometimes you get on a college campus, you think you know more than you know, and you have to remember you're leaving a safe, secure. No, not that college is not safe, but you're that home that you have, and move it into a big university.
That home. And there's a wealth of things that college students are stressed by: greater academic demands, it's a new environment, being away from home. And so there's plenty of reasons why we should be aware of the college mental health and what they can and need to do for themselves.
Absolutely. And you mentioned really quickly communities. Who is our community for a college student?
Your community can be anything from your hallmates in your dormitory, or if you live off campus, your neighbors. Your community could be classmates, study groups, things like that. There are hundreds of student organizations on campus that you can consider joining, even at the latest hour. And those would be people who you would consider your community. Faculty, teaching assistants, any of those people can be considered community.
Wow, Maya, thank you so much for that wonderful information. This has been awesome. I have learned so much, and I want to thank you again for joining us today. And again, we're here every Thursday from 3 to 3:30. I'm your host, Wendy Bridgers, and we are here on Family Health Matters, Awesome Radio 106.9 FM, and we're on Facebook, Awesome Radio Facebook, and GPAC Facebook, and YouTube. So feel free to join us each day, each Thursday from 3 to 3:30. And again, Maya, thank you so much for being here with me with that awesome, wonderful, wonderful information. God bless you, and take care.
Awesome Radio.
You are an image bearer of Almighty God, and you have
Great
automatic
job.
intrinsic value. Your value comes from God, not me. Your value comes from God, not your spouse, not your children, not your parents, not your pastor, not your
Thank you
coworkers.
so much.
That is a great description of Genesis 1:27, which says we're all
Thank
made
you.
Okay, Maya can hear you now.
Okay. Are we Facebook off?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good to go? Okay.
Yes, awesome job. Oh, that was wonderful.
That was excellent. Thank you so much. That was great.
Look, that somebody said they're watching live from Ghana.
Yeah, I saw that pop up there. I was like, I couldn't read the word. I was like, what does that really mean, Ghana?
That's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, so we've been overseas, girl.
We here. No, that was great. I love the questions you posed. I think that'll be extremely helpful. I hope.
Yeah, I think so. I think that added even to your PowerPoint that you sent. I mean, I think those are some pieces that maybe at some point in time, if you revise that, you might be able to add some of that message, some of those comments in there. But yeah.
Okay.
It went so smoothly. I know you're so busy, but thank you so much, and I look forward to our next time.
For sure, we will be in contact.
All righty.
Okay. Take care. Bye. I will.
Okay. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Kayla, do I need to do anything to this? Thank you. Are we good? Yeah, she back. She back.
Mm-hmm.